This is the family who lived with a ghost for 17 years. This house was once home to a happy family of 5, but that was until they realized they were not alone in the house. It all started when the parents decided to move into an old farmhouse with their 3 young children. The house was absolutely huge, and most importantly, it was cheap. But little did they know, this would come at a price. As soon as they moved in, strange things started happening. At first, it was just small things like lights flickering and doors opening and closing by themselves. But then things started to escalate. One day, the mother was making dinner in the kitchen when she heard a blood-curdling scream coming from upstairs. She called out to her husband and one of her sons, but they didn't hear anything. I definitely heard a scream, she thought. So she decided to go check it out. As she walked up the stairs, the hair on the back of her neck stood up. Then she saw something that made her run back downstairs as fast as she could. When she got back to the kitchen, she told her husband that she had seen the ghost of a girl in a Victorian nightgown standing at the top of the stairs. Her husband didn't believe her, so she told him to go check it out for himself. He walked upstairs and sure enough, he saw the ghost. He came back down the stairs, pale as a sheet, and told his wife that he was going to call a paranormal investigator. She agreed, and that's when they contacted John. John was a well-known paranormal investigator who had helped many families in the area. He came to the house with his 2 assistants, and they spent the entire day investigating. They used cameras, voice recorders, and even a thermal imaging camera to try to get some evidence of the ghost. To their surprise, they actually managed to capture some really convincing evidence. On camera, they saw the same ghost that the mother had seen. And on the voice recorder, they heard what sounded like a little girl's voice saying, "Go away." They also picked up a lot of unexplained electromagnetic energy readings throughout the house, especially in the room at the top of the stairs where the ghost had appeared. After the investigation, John told the family that they were not alone in the house, and that there was definitely a ghost there, but he couldn't tell them anything else, because he needed to do more research. So he took the evidence back to his headquarters to see if he could find out more information. Meanwhile, the family was starting to feel very uneasy in their home. They had never believed in ghosts before, but now they weren't so sure. They started hearing footsteps, doors opening and closing, and even shaking. Sometimes they would even see the ghost of the girl walking down the hallway. It was getting worse, and they needed John to come back as soon as possible. A few weeks later, John came back to the house with some shocking news. He had done some digging in the local historical society and found out everything about the ghost. The ghost's name was Mary, and she had died in the house 100 years ago. She was only 9 years old when she passed away from a disease called the Spanish flu. John also found out that Mary's parents had built the house and had put her room at the top of the stairs. It seemed like she was attached to this room and didn't want to leave. The family was shocked to learn this, but they were also relieved to finally know who the ghost was. John told them that the best thing to do would be to try to communicate with Mary and see if there was anything she needed help with. Maybe she was just trying to tell them that she was here and that she was okay. So the next time the ghost appeared, the mother called out to her and asked if she needed any help. All of a sudden, a cold breeze swept through the room and the mother felt a gentle touch on her shoulder. She turned around, but there was no one there. However, she knew that Mary had been trying to tell her something, so she went back to the top of the stairs to see if there was anything up there. And sure enough, there was. She found an old diary hidden behind a loose floorboard. When she opened it up, she saw that it was filled with Mary's handwriting. The diary contained Mary's thoughts, feelings, and experiences during her life. The mother read through the diary and found that Mary was a very happy child despite the dark times. She loved playing outside, reading books, and spending time with her family. The mother felt a strong connection with Mary and knew that she was a kind and gentle soul. After finding the diary, the ghost of Mary was seen less and less often. It almost felt like she was saying goodbye. The family was sad to see her go, but they were also grateful for the time that they had spent with her. One day, the father was in the attic when he heard a loud crash. He went to investigate and found that some of the old beams had fallen through the roof. He called the rest of the family over, and they all started to make plans to fix the house. That's when they decided that they were not going to move. They loved the house and the history that came with it. Plus, they had grown attached to Mary and didn't want to leave her behind. They started making repairs to the house, and it took them years to finish. But slowly, but surely, they made progress. They put new floors in, painted the walls, and added insulation. They also put up pictures of Mary around the house so that she would feel like she was still a part of the family. As the years passed, the family grew, and they started having children of their own. They had 4 beautiful children who played happily in Mary's old room. The family was complete, and they were happier than ever. But one day, tragedy struck. The mother was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive cancer. The family was devastated and didn't know what to do. They tried everything they could to save her, but in the end, she passed away. The family was heartbroken, but they knew that she was in a better place now. At her funeral, the father made a promise to his late wife that he would never move out of the house. He loved it too much and didn't want to leave. He knew that she would want him to stay. Many years later, the father and his children were sitting in the living room telling stories about their late mother. They were laughing and crying, remembering all the good times they had shared. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and they heard a loud bang coming from upstairs. They all looked at each other and smiled. They knew that their mother had come to visit. Over the years, the family had experienced many strange and unexplainable things in the house, but they had never been afraid. They knew that Mary was a friendly ghost and that she meant them no harm. They had accepted her as a member of the family, and she had become a part of their lives. In fact, they had grown to love her. They missed her when she wasn't there, and they felt her presence every day. They knew that she was watching over them, guiding them and protecting them. The family continued to live in the house for many years. They raised their children there, celebrated holidays, and made memories that would last a lifetime. They never forgot about Mary, and they always made sure to honor her memory. Some people might have been scared to live in a house with a ghost, but this family embraced it. They learned that ghosts are always scary, and that they can actually be a part of your family. They also learned that death isn't the end, and that sometimes our loved ones just want to visit us and let us know that they're okay. And that's the story of the family who lived with a ghost for 17 years. What would you do if you found out that you were living with a ghost? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, be sure to check out some more of my content. Thanks for watching. This is one mystery that has never been solved, and it continues to be a huge pain for those involved even till this day. This is the story of the Phantom Driver. Our story begins in 2011. On July 13, 2011, something strange happened in West Virginia. A sheriff's deputy named Randy Taylor responded to a call. He had received a report about a reckless driver. The person had apparently almost hit another car on Route 48 near Brewston Mills. The driver of the other car got out of his vehicle and confronted the reckless driver, but when he did so, the driver sped off. That was weird. Why would he speed off if he hadn't done anything wrong? Deputy Taylor decided to investigate. He began searching for the reckless driver, but it didn't take long for him to find the car. It was abandoned on the side of the road. This was very suspicious, so he called for backup. Then he approached the car cautiously. There was no one inside. As he looked around, he noticed several items on the floor. These were children's shoes. But how could a car with children's shoes just be abandoned on the side of the road? What had happened here? Had the driver lost control of the car and then ran away? Or had someone kidnapped the kids? The police couldn't figure it out. They searched everywhere, but they couldn't find the driver or anyone else. And soon they wouldn't even find the car either. You see, before long, the car disappeared. Yes, the entire car was gone without a trace, leaving behind only a set of tire tracks in the dust. The police investigated, and they figured out that the car had been stolen from a mechanic shop. But why? Who steals a car, puts children's shoes in it, drives recklessly, then leaves it on the side of the road and disappears? To this day, no one knows. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps us out. Also, stick around until the end to hear about another unsolved mystery. You won't want to miss it. For a while, the case went cold, but recently it was opened once again. Police are now looking into whether the creepy case is connected to a missing persons case from 1969. If it is, then it means that a man who went missing more than 50 years ago might have been the Phantom Driver all along. His name was Roger Genepi. He went missing in West Virginia, and his car was found abandoned on the side of the road. Some believe he might have run off the road, but his car wasn't damaged. In fact, it was just sitting there, like the Phantom Driver's car. Roger's brother, Gary, thinks that the cases might be connected. He says, "If the shoe theory is correct, that would put my brother's disappearance at this location around the same time frame. The timeline fits perfectly. Roger was last seen wearing shoes just like the ones that were in the Phantom Driver's car. But what makes this so strange is that Roger was last seen driving an old Ford Galaxy, not a modern car like the Phantom Drivers. Still, these similarities are too much to ignore. Maybe Roger was the Phantom Driver all along. Maybe his car broke down, and then he stole another one. But then why would he abandon the second car? Was he chased by the police? Did someone else jump in the car and drive it away? Or was Roger simply taken away by aliens? Well, maybe. There are plenty of conspiracy theories surrounding this case. One of them suggests that the Phantom Driver isn't one person, but many. According to this theory, the driver seen by the witness was real, but he wasn't the one who abandoned the car. Instead, he stopped at a diner, changed his clothes, and then asked another driver to get in his car and drive him away. This driver was likely paid a large sum of money. After the switch, the original driver continued on foot and abandoned the car later. Another theory is that the Phantom Driver suffered from amnesia. Maybe he had a mental breakdown and then forgot everything. The most basic explanation is that the Phantom Driver simply crashed the car and then fled the scene. He could have left the children's shoes behind after getting scared. But if this was the case, why did he steal the car in the first place? Was he trying to commit a robbery, or did he simply borrow the car from someone? Some think that the whole thing might have been an elaborate hoax. Someone could have put the shoes in the car to mislead the police. Maybe they wanted people to think that the Phantom Driver had kidnapped some children. But why? What kind of sick person would go through all the trouble of stealing a car, putting children's shoes in it, driving it around town and then abandoning it, unless they intended to come back for the car later? But why? One of the strangest theories is that the Phantom Driver was from the future. According to conspiracy theorists, the Phantom Driver is a time traveler from the far future. He might have broken down accidentally, or maybe he was being chased by police from the future. Maybe the shoes were left behind to confuse authorities across time. It's also possible that the Phantom Driver was being chased by aliens. He might have accidentally stumbled upon something he shouldn't have, which is why he was forced to flee. This would explain why the car vanished. It's possible that the aliens used technology to dematerialize the vehicle. There's also the theory that the Phantom Driver was a test subject. That is, he was part of a government experiment. If true, he could have developed strange abilities after the experiment. These abilities allowed him to move the car at will and even make it disappear. But if this was the case, where did he go? Was he transported to another dimension, or did he simply vanish? Another possibility is that the Phantom Driver is dead. Some believe he had a heart attack while driving, but he didn't crash because his body took over just before impact. When officers arrived, they weren't able to tell because his body had decomposed. That's also why no fingerprints could be found in the car. But maybe the most horrifying theory is that the Phantom Driver is alive and well. He could be living among us right now, walking free after abandoning his car. But why? Why would he do such a thing? Perhaps he planned to return for the car, but for some reason changed his mind. Maybe he saw the police arriving and panicked, or maybe he didn't know what he was doing, or maybe he was drunk and had no idea where he was going. Perhaps he was just trying to get away from his problems. But whatever the reason, he never went back for the car. And though the police eventually figured out who he was, they still don't know why. The biggest problem in this case is that there's no evidence. The police have no physical evidence. No one came forward with any information, and there were no security cameras nearby. There were no witnesses to the alleged kidnapping either. Whatever happened to the Phantom Driver, he managed to cover his tracks well. When the police finally caught up to him, he claimed that he had no idea what they were talking about. He said that he had been drinking heavily that night, and had no memory of driving the car or abandoning it. But did he really forget, or was he lying? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. As for the owner of the car, he was happy to hear that the Phantom Driver was tracked down, but he was still confused by the case. He says, "I don't care what happened to him, but I'd like to know what happened to my truck. I'd like to have some closure on that." Unfortunately, that's one question that may never be answered. The case of the Phantom Driver is one of the strangest mysteries ever. Though the case seems to be connected to a missing persons case from 1969, there's still no solid evidence. Even after reopening the case, the police have come up with more questions than answers. Who was the Phantom Driver? What happened to him? And what happened to the car? All these questions continue to plague the police to this day. What do you think happened? Let us know in the comments below. Also, make sure to subscribe. We've got lots of unsolved mysteries that will keep you up at night. Now you need to watch what actually happened to Amelia Earhart, or have a look at this. Something followed me home from the cemetery. It was a frigid December day in 2018 when I traveled home to Ohio for Christmas. I decided to make the 9-hour drive myself this year, instead of flying, since my brother was coming along with me. My dad offered to meet us halfway, but I told him I wanted to make a stop at the local cemetery to pay my respects to my mom who passed away earlier that year, after battling cancer. My mom loved Christmas, and we had lost her just 3 months prior to that December. It was the first Christmas without her, and it would be the first one where she would be here to open presents with us or bake Christmas cookies. And I hadn't been to visit her grave yet. Growing up, we always visited the cemetery on Memorial Day to clean off her headstone and tell her all about what was going on in our lives. But this time would be different. I knew I needed to say a few words to her and let her know how much I missed her. My brother and I made it to the cemetery around 3 p.m. It was gray and cold, like most days in Ohio during the winter, and there wasn't a soul in sight. The cemetery was completely empty. That was fine with me since I just wanted some time alone. The wrought iron fence surrounding the cemetery was old and creaky. The wind was howling, and it sounded like someone was screaming in pain. I walked through the large oak doors and over to the office where an old woman sat behind a desk. She greeted me and asked if I needed any help finding a grave. I told her which section my mom was buried in and thanked her for her time. I said goodbye, then started walking down the long lane that led to the back of the cemetery where I knew her grave was. As I walked, I noticed the ground was very uneven. It was hard to keep my eyes focused on the path because all of the trees looked identical. They were bare and twisted with long hanging branches. It was like they were reaching out towards me. There was something strange about the way the trees lined the path, like it was a tunnel and they were trying to close in on me. My heart started racing, and I began to feel uneasy. I quickened my pace and started to walk faster. The wind seemed to get louder too. It was like something was following me. I finally found my mom's grave and knelt down next to it. I talked to her for a while, told her about the job I started, the new car I bought, and how much I missed her. After a bit, I stood up, brushed the dirt off my pants, and headed back to the car. As I walked, I kept glancing over my shoulder like someone or something was behind me, but when I turned around, there was nothing there. The whole cemetery was still empty. When I reached the car, my brother was asleep. I woke him up and he acted surprised to see me. He asked if I was done and I nodded, still feeling uneasy about the feeling I got while walking back. We got in the car and started the engine. As we pulled out onto the road, I noticed a man standing by the wrought iron fence. He was tall and thin with scraggly hair and a beard. I couldn't see his face because he had a black hoodie pulled tight around it. At first I thought maybe he was an employee of the cemetery and was just taking a break. But when I glanced over at him again, he was still standing there. I slowed down and rolled down my window to ask him if he needed anything. He didn't respond. He just continued staring at us. I felt a chill run down my spine and told my brother to just keep driving. As we drove past him, I saw that he had a backpack with him. I don't know why, but that set off alarm bells in my mind. I could unhelp but think that he must have been hiding in the cemetery, and maybe he had been the whole time. I could unget that thought out of my head, and it made the rest of the drive uncomfortable. When we finally got to my parents' house, my dad was already waiting in the driveway. I ran into his arms and tried to explain what happened at the cemetery. He just gave me a weird look and suggested that we all just go inside. I was still shaken up about the guy and kept thinking about how strange it was that he was at the cemetery and what he could have been doing there. I tried to put it out of my mind and focus on spending time with my family, but I couldn't help but feel unsettled. Later that evening, my brother and I went to go sit in the hot tub. It was nice and relaxing, and I started to feel better. That is, until I heard footsteps outside. We both looked over and saw dark figures running across my dad's yard. I thought it was strange because it was so late and no one was outside anymore. Then we saw them stop near the bushes next to the hot tub. My brother and I froze and stared out at the darkness. All of a sudden a voice shouted from behind the bushes, "Boo." My brother and I screamed and turned to see my dad standing there with a big smile on his face. He explained that he and my mom had planned to scare us, and they had been hiding out in the bushes waiting for the right moment. I was relieved, but I couldn't help but scold my dad for being such a jerk. I told him what happened earlier with the guy at the cemetery and how unnerved it made me. My dad still had that goofy grin on his face and told me not to be silly. He said that people sometimes get their stories mixed up and start believing things that aren't real. I appreciated him trying to reassure me, but it didn't really help. I still couldn't get the images of the man in the cemetery out of my head. That night, I lay in bed replaying everything that had happened since I arrived at the cemetery. I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head and there was nothing to worry about, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I got up and went to the bathroom. When I looked in the mirror, my reflection stared back with wide, frightened eyes. It was then I realized that I was terrified of whatever it was that I had encountered at the cemetery, afraid that it might be following me and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Sleep came fitfully that night, and it wasn't until my dad knocked on my door early in the morning to wake me up for Christmas that I really felt safe. Once the chaos of Christmas morning had died down and everyone had gone home, my brother and I decided to open the gifts that my mom had left for us to open on Christmas. She had gotten me a beautiful necklace and a book called Angel Whispers, a guide to understanding and empowering your angels and spirit guides. I thought it was just a coincidence, but my brother joked that maybe our guardian angels had met up at the cemetery the day before. Even though I didn't believe him, I couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, my mom's spirit was watching over us. The next morning, I woke up early and went to the bathroom. I looked in the mirror and realized that my reflection stared back with wide, frightened eyes. I was terrified of whatever it was that I had encountered at the cemetery. I was afraid that it might be following me and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. 1 month later, I was getting stuff from my mom's office. She had passed away in March, so her things were still there. I opened the closet door and saw the beige walls of the room reflected in the mirror on the closet door. I thought it was strange, but I didn't think much of it. I went about cleaning out the closet and gathering up my things. As I walked past the full-length mirror on the wall, I caught my reflection in it. Startled, I stopped and stared at the girl looking back at me. Standing directly behind me was a tall, thin figure with scraggly hair and a beard. He was wearing a black hoodie, and his face was hidden in the shadows. I spun around, but there was no one there. I backed away from the closet, my heart pounding in my chest, and quickly left the room. That's when I knew whatever had been haunting me from the cemetery wasn't some ordinary ghost. It was something evil. Have you ever seen a ghost? Let me know your story in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon. Bye.